Today, we are going to be having a conversation, that's primarily linked with something we all refer to as trauma.
That's totally it too, Pulkit. That's the metaphor that I use in the book is us being buried by guilt, shame, regret, depression, excruciating, overwhelming anxiety, trauma, addiction. So yeah, that's what the book is about is find
Around 6 months back, I was at a place in my life, and I've talked in the previous episodes as well, where I was in a state of being buried alive.
I appreciate you sharing a little bit about your testimony, Pulkit, and your experience and how these different Instagrams, Facebook, X, and I think that it's great to have these videos, and you might have seen it too, where it's great to get this information, yet what do I do with it? How do I take agency with this information? What does that look like? And I think that being curious about how to take the agency, introspection on what's I'm feeling and sensing and thinking.
Listeners, today we are going to be having a conversation, that's primarily linked with something we all refer to as trauma. It can be trauma because of an incident that we had faced, or it could be something where we were not able to achieve the milestones that we had set for ourselves, or probably a breakup that happened, or a relationship didn't turn out the way we wanted. And trauma and emotional health come together, and how they really impact our day-to-day life, that's what we're going to be discussing. And how do we probably navigate it through? That's one of the major focus of our conversation today, and for that we have got Eric with us. Hi Eric, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Phuket. Thanks for having me on today. How's things going for yourself?
Pleasure is all mine. Thanks a lot, Eric, for accepting the invite and coming and sharing your knowledge and your experience with our listeners.
Hey,
Things are really
great,
amazing.
great to be on.
Yeah, things are amazing. For me, probably it's towards the end of my day, but I believe for you the day is starting.
Yes,
Uh,
the day has just begun at 7:30. Yes.
so I'm at 7 p.m. right now, but yes, let's make the most of it and look at giving some insights to our listeners. But yeah, before that, why don't you introduce yourself, your experience, and probably your journey? Because if I went through your introduction, you started with martial arts somewhere and two other forms that are linked with it. So why don't you share about those as well?
Sure, Phuket. Yeah, thanks for allowing me to do so. So I've been in the field of mental wellness for over 16 years now. And yes, I've done two martial arts styles, 10 to 12 years old, Wado and 16 to 18 American Kempo. And a little bit of jujitsu with that too. But a black belt in the two that I formerly said. And so, yeah, I've been doing private practice work. I work for a retreat center. I work for a nonprofit that's in another town nearby here in Calgary, a little bit further north out of the city, called the Thumbs Up Foundation. Yeah, so I have my hands in a few honey jars, and I've authored two books with the third one that's supposed to be coming out this year. Hopefully, we'll see what happens. And yeah, I just like to meet people where they're at when it comes to the work. And that's a little bit about myself as a master's level Canadian Certified Counselor.
Amazing, amazing. I would love to know about your books and what really inspired you to write those.
The first one's called The Martial Art Recovery, and so that book is about the intersection of martial arts concepts and tools for addiction recovery. And so, just for an example, thundering hammers is a martial arts technique. I translate that to thundering uncertainty, just to do some wordplay, but also emphasize the importance of exploring uncertainty, the feelings that come with uncertainty, the thoughts that come with uncertainty when someone starts to make that journey toward recovery. And that could be for trauma, for depression, for anxiety, where it's like, what's this going to look like? I have no idea. So that's what that book's about, just to give a really quick elevator pitch. And then the second book is called Buried Alive, Four Ways to Free Yourself from the Dirt. And that book is about a true experience that my dad had with a near-death experience where he was buried alive. Thankfully, he survived with the help of two friends. And I bring in four different self-help concepts and interweave that into the narrative of the documentary I did with these three men who went through this unfortunate experience, my dad especially, and show how those concepts apply to what happened then with the incident, but also how we can use those concepts now.
Wow, amazing, amazing. I am already curious to read the books and definitely would love to, hear a bit about the experience of your dad.
Mm.
How did he really navigate that? Because in today's world, a lot of individuals might not be on a literal front buried alive, but with whatever is happening in their lives, in a figurative manner, they are buried alive. They are not able to really navigate it through the baggage of emotional traumas or stress that they're carrying. So, what are your thoughts on that?
That's totally it too, Pulkit. That's the metaphor that I use in the book is us being buried alive by guilt, shame, regret, depression, excruciating, overwhelming anxiety, trauma, addiction. So, yeah, that's what the book is about: is finding out how can I unearth myself, how can I learn to excavate me, and one of those four parts in the book is about the importance of social connections, of community, not being swallowed up by social media. I mean, social media has its place for sure, yet being able to connect with people. And so I think that that's a huge metaphor that we can all use. Absolutely, Pulkit. And that's, you're bang on. Absolutely.
Well, definitely, because in my own personal experience, Eric, for me, probably around 6 months back, I was at a place in my life, and I've talked in the previous episodes as well, where I was in a state of being buried alive. I was at a place where I was not able to, you know, even think what I need to do next. Every second was a difficult for me to live, stay alive. And today I'm at a place where I'm really thankful to the universe, to, the God I believe in, to help me navigate that through. And since April this year, I have found that, way to navigate it, how to really surrender. I come across a lot of self-help videos over Instagram. And until you have not yourself been through that journey, until you yourself have not, navigated that path, it all seems to be noise. You hear it today, probably you will just scroll it out, or even if you're going through the whole video of, let's say, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 2 minutes, you will forget it the very next moment you scroll it away. So that's where I totally believe, people really need to first identify and accept and then build on it. And I would really love to understand what are your thoughts and what do you really recommend to people out there?
Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing a little bit about your testimony, Pulkit, and your experience and how these different Instagrams, Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, all these videos seem so much like noise because we can just scroll through them so quickly. And yes, 2, 3, 5 minutes later, out of our heads. I do believe that when it comes to this work on oneself, and I can relate to it from the context vicariously with my dad, but also like vicariously going through a disenfranchised loss, which in my experience was a miscarriage with my wife and I, that there needs to be the importance of what's called CIA. And CIA in this book that I wrote, I mean, it might sound like an Instagram video, but I go into the depth of curiosity, introspection, and taking agency. And I think that it's great to have these videos, and you might have seen it too, where it's great to get this information, yet what do I do with it? How do I take agency with this information? What does that look like? And I think that being curious about how to take the agency, introspection on what's I'm feeling and sensing and thinking, and how memories have affected me, and then looking at agency, just taking one small action more than I did yesterday can be a big help to all of us. And even in the work that I do professionally, I got to take agency with self care or I'm going to burn out quite quickly. Yeah.
I totally agree. And you're bang on at the point where you say it's curiosity is always the, introspection also happen often. But mostly what's lacking is taking agency of that information and knowledge that you have just been, made acquainted to. And I believe taking an action is the main point where a lot of us, people out there lack. And even for me, for a long time, I really didn't know how to really get out of that spiraling that was happening with me. I was just going spiraling down, spiraling down. Every day was just, okay, let's get through this day. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but let's get through this day. And yeah, today I'm sitting in front of you, able to do my work throughout the day. There are things, but yes, for me now, one, they don't have that overpowering impact on me. I am able to turn them on, turn them off whenever I want. I will not say that those emotions have completely gone away. They still, make their appearances whenever I go through some triggers that are there still to be worked upon. But yes, now today I am able to switch them off the moment I realize, okay, I am starting to spiral down. Let's turn them off and get back to the work. So that power has come within me, and I really hope and wish for a lot of people to start taking agency, start taking action on the information that is being shared with them.
Yes. I think you're showing a big difference, Pulkit, between a wave of emotions and a spiral. And you mentioned the word spiral. And I think we can get stuck in a place without agency where there is a spiraling. And that could be with shame, with guilt, with disappointment, regret, hurt, abandonment. And sure, these are all feelings that can be quite valid. Sometimes not so much valid, especially with guilt. Sometimes it's misplaced. Yet, when it comes to a wave, it's kind of like, okay, I feel the feeling, I notice the feeling, I see what this is informing me as far as a feeling, I see what thoughts are behind this, fueling this feeling. I see a judgment involved with this feeling of what I should or shouldn't do. I'm getting into a relationship with this emotion. And doing that as much as I can throughout the day, not with every single feeling, but at least more than what I did yesterday, a little bit today, it can help someone go from being in that spiral to a wave. And if I was to give people 4 questions to ask themselves to help with the agency, it's simply number one, this is not original. This comes from a positive psychology document I was able to ascertain. So hats off to positive psychology. Number one, what am I doing? Number two, why am I doing it? Number three, what's this going to lead to, this action? And number four, what's the first small step I can do today to
Yeah.
do this? And just mentally or visually writing down if I'm working on exercise or whatever these feelings or experiences. What am I doing? I am doing some self care. Why am I doing it? So just to help to get the brain juices flowing.
So that's really important. That's really important to start focusing on that. You also talked about uncertainty, and the fear of uncertainty, I believe, is one of the root causes where we talk about guilt, trauma, stress, anxiety, depression. Uh, so how can somebody really cater to uncertainty? Because for me also, the fear of uncertainty had a very major role to play in my whole situation that was there. So what are your thoughts and guidance for the people out there?
Sure. When I'm able to talk with people about uncertainty, I always appreciate when people are able to actually voice that out loud, that they're experiencing that uncertainty, which can be a state of mind and an emotional experience. And I appreciate the vulnerability with that. So I believe a number one thing that we all can do is just say, hey, I'm uncertain about how this is going to go. Actually, my first Instagram video, which, I'm 40 plus, and so Instagram was something I had to learn, and I'm still learning, and, I feel like I'm definitely below the bar with Instagram. My first video was about uncertainty, and on the video I was saying I'm uncertain about how this video is going to go, talking about uncertainty, and how it's going to be produced. And I think just being able to acknowledge it out loud is a big piece, and that can be including people that are in my peer support group or just one friend, where I can tell somebody, hey, I really don't know how this is going to go. I'm starting to work with a counselor or a psychologist or a social worker or a healer of some sort, and I'm in this dark valley and I don't know how it's going to go. And just being able to acknowledge it. And also, Self-care practices, yes, will have their place when it comes to dealing with uncertainty. Being able to look at body, mind, and spirit, different practices, which we could spend a lot of time on as far as over self-care activities. I do believe that guided visualization has its place as well with uncertainty, and that can be just doing some deep breathing practices and being able to visualize, what I would like to see for myself. That could also be done in the context of like just going to a calm place when I'm having that uncertainty, just to help myself move through so it doesn't become like quite debilitating. Yet also got a visualization for, you know what? If I was able to be at the finish, well, quote finish line, we're in a process, we are continuing to go. We're never really fully at the finish line yet. If I was able to get to a place further down the road, what would I be feeling? What would I be thinking? Who would be in my corner? That kind of thing. And that can be helpful too with some deep breathing and even doing some tapping as well, some tapping exercises. So those are a few of the pieces I would say for folks if they want to work on uncertainty, and just affirmations as well. Do my best, forget the rest. Even though I feel blank, I felt this before and I can persevere. For those that are working on like eating disorders, I love the affirmation, my body is an ornament, or sorry, my body is not an ornament, it's an instrument. And my body is the least interesting thing about me. So just finding those type of affirmations.
Nice, nice, nice.
Yeah.
Um, you slightly touched upon the peer group aspect out there, Eric, and I would really love to understand from you the importance of having a peer support group, and from two perspectives primarily, from the person or the individual who is going through emotional turmoil. So why is it really important for them to, have a peer support group? And from the peer support group's perspective, how should they be extending that support out there? And how do they really draw boundaries for themselves? Because there needs to be a line that needs to be drawn for their own emotional health. So, what are your thoughts?
I've done a lot of groups in the past, and they're always fun. So many dynamics. I once had to call out somebody for monopolizing, and let's just say that was quite a difficult experience for me, but also for the person getting the feedback. I would say when it comes to people that want to support somebody else with that question, looking at the Karpman drama triangle, knowing knowing the difference between rescuing and helping. There's often a thin line. I have to understand, and you mentioned boundaries. I have to know what my limits are or preferences with somebody emotionally, intellectually, spiritually. We can go into this if we need to. Materialistically, so, like I don't want you to touch my purse, that kind of thing. So just knowing those type of boundaries for myself, establishing them. They don't have to be necessarily verbally. They can be nonverbal, and then if someone does cross, let them know there's a consequence for crossing that boundary. Especially if it happens more than once. Fool me once, hey, fool me twice. Yeah. So I would say that that's important to be able to have as a group standard, is even in like some group guidelines at the beginning of each group for the facilitator, to be able to give that, please have your boundaries in place. What is said here, let it stay here when you leave here. Don't go out and tell people on Facebook or other people outside the group explicitly. I would also say that for the person that is actually given the speaking, Pulkit, being able to actually give information in the group, self-preservation does play a role. And part of boundaries for myself is not telling all in the first meeting, but also not telling more than I'd like to tell, which could damage myself. Or I'm like, oh man, why did I bring that up? I wasn't ready emotionally to bring that up. I once heard on another podcast, I think it's for divorce for men over 40, that I'm not divorced, but I was on a podcast and I was just listening to some other podcast on that podcast. Don't talk about the scabs, talk about the scars. So if something's really fresh, then maybe take some time with it before you bring it to the group. I mean, you definitely can get support, yet also let the group know, like, hey, I want to bring this up, yet I don't want to bring it. I don't want to bring all the details up. I'm just bringing a little bit up. I'm welcome to some feedback, that kind of thing. Let's see. As far as the group experience too, just we have to watch out for monopolizers. Absolutely, that's sometimes going to happen. Some people are aware of that. Some people aren't. And I think for people in groups, being able to understand the importance of silence is often misunderstated. So I've had to also learn that as well. Being a facilitator, let's keep it going. Let's keep the questions going. Let's keep this fire going. Sometimes there needs to be some silence. I once had a group member who was like, he kept on bringing up a question or a statement when there was some silence, and I had to ask him, so what's your relationship with silence? And he was like, I don't really like it. I was like, okay, good to know. What about the rest of you folks? So I hope that answers at least one of the questions that you asked.
Yeah, definitely. This brings me on to my next, point I would like to understand from you. In my own experience and probably listening or observing conversations with other people as well, I've observed one pattern out there with people who are going through emotional struggles is to prove that their experience or their struggle is more tough, their pain is much bigger than anybody else. When somebody starts sharing about their trauma or their experiences, the other person would react or reply with an experience trying to I will not say undermine, might not be the right word, but to a point where they want to show that okay, their experience and their trauma was much bigger. And that constantly keeps happening because then the other person, the first person would respond with something else that's gonna try to portray that okay, this particular instance is much bigger. And this just keeps going on and going on. And over the years, what I realized is, and even today, around 2 hours back, I was having a conversation with my sibling. And to a certain extent, she was like, you don't understand this. Earlier, my response used to be, no, I do understand. Today, I was like, I didn't really say anything back. Okay, I don't understand. For you, if I don't understand, I don't understand. I don't really need to prove to you that I understand what you're going through. But yeah, if you just want me to listen to it, I am listening to it right now. And probably when the right time is there, I would tell you that, okay, I understand that particular aspect where you're coming from. But yes, in general, I have seen this, pattern with people. And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Pulkit, I think a lot of people will mistake empathy. Well, they'll mistake competition for empathy. Like I'm going to bring up something that seems to trump the other person's experience. And sometimes people don't even know that they're doing it. And I've also seen people on the other end where they don't want to bring up an experience because they heard someone else's traumatic experience or their experience with whatever it is in the group. And they're like, well, I don't feel like I can, I can relate, right? And thankfully, I've also had the experience of one case example of a woman who unfortunately lost her son to an overdose with opiates, and she kept on coming to the group for a certain time. Yet, I never got the feedback from other group members or observationally that they didn't want her to be there just because it's like, well, you think it's bad with your sibling or parent or child, they're still in active addiction or early recovery. Well, I lost my son. I never got that. And I think it's because she never did that. Like she never made it to where, look what I've been through. She gave her testimony and she talked about what she felt. Yet she never made it seem like she was better. And I think it takes a lot of self-awareness. It takes a lot of grace. It takes a lot of self-control and compassion for the other group members and empathy. Not to say, hey, let me make you feel better because of what I've been through. It's a lot worse. So Yeah, I mean, that can happen. Absolutely. It depends. I think the motivation people have to ask themselves when they go into groups, Pulkit, what's my intention for
Yeah.
coming into the group? You know, like, what am I really wanting to get out of this experience? Really good to have an homogenous group if people can, because if we have like let's say it's a group for people that have experienced unexpected and unanticipated loss, it's a grief group. If it can be just, I mean, not like just, if it can be for people that have, maybe they've lost people due to chronic illness or sudden illness leading to death. Yet, if you have that one group member where they have a family member that died by suicide, it's like, well, you think yours is bad. Well, my family member died by suicide. Grief is grief. Unfortunately, that could happen in that kind of situation.
No,
Yeah.
I totally, agree with you what you just shared. And you also likely touched upon spirituality as a point, and that's something I would be really interested to hear your perspective on it. For me, spirituality has been the way to get out of the whole, emotional turmoil, the spiraling I was going through. And for me, getting too much into that would mean probably bringing the Hindu religion aspect into it. So I would not share too much on that, keeping the things neutral over here. But yes, from you, I would love to understand spirituality in general out there and what has been your experience with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for sharing a little bit about your background. I'm a Christian, so that's my personal background religiously. Spirituality wise, it was pretty cool. And this comes from, I used to show this video. It was angels and animals. And this rabbi talked about the differences between the two. And his name was it was Abraham Twersky. He's pretty fly for a rabbi. He since passed on. He has a book called Addictive Thinking that's very secular. You would not think a rabbi wrote it. Anyway, he talks about spirituality in the context of vitamin A, B, C, D, and E. So he talks about, hey, what vitamin do we need to use for scurvy? Vitamin C. I could use as much vitamin B as I want to, but it's not going to take care of that scurvy. And he equated that to spirituality. So I could drink, I could use cocaine, watch porn, gamble, whatever it is, vitamin A, B, D, and E. It's not vitamin C. So he equated spirituality to getting humanity back and gaining freedom more so. Because he talked about in the context of addiction, what does addiction take away from us? Our humanity, because of all the shame and the guilt, and our freedom. Because we're shackled or enslaved to the substance or the behavior or whatever that is. So I always appreciated that. And as a Christian, I want to be a slave to Christ as far as my faith, yet I don't want to be a slave to a behavior or a substance. So it's being able to look at, yeah, freedom. And you might have saw that too, because, freedom and humanity and how spirituality can give back purpose and direction and meaning and the ability to feel free again.
I can totally echo with that experience. For me, since I have started finding my grounding in spirituality out there, things have become so much stress free. I feel, a lot of contentment within, a lot of calmness within, and any uncertainty that comes up. Even though before that, also, I used to be coming from a solution oriented mindset. But after finding the grounding, that expanse of that solution oriented mindset has widened quite a lot. Uh, totally. So, been really enjoying it. And for me now, it has come to a place where I cannot control anything. I leave everything to the universe out there, and I'm just putting in my efforts. So, leaving things to universe does not mean I stop putting in efforts. I have been putting in efforts, but yes, I'm not expecting the realization of those efforts into the fruits of those efforts immediately. It might happen, it might not happen, but for me, what I can do is efforts, but I cannot control anything after that. So
Totally. Yeah. I hear you. we can only do so much. And as a solution oriented mindset, I was having a chat with somebody professionally a few days ago, and I was so frustrated. I was super frustrated in the session. I was like, why? After the session, I was just exhausted mentally and emotionally. And I was like, what is wrong? And I came to the realization that I was trying to do a solution oriented framework for this relationship with this person's particular relationship with someone. And I realized that this person was approaching it from like a project management kind of viewpoint. Like it's a project to be managed. And I bought into that in that session. And I've been doing this for a few years, Pulkit, yet I can still get pulled into that. Let's figure it out. Let's fix it. Let's find the right, perfect solution for this relationship. And I had to realize, nope, this is a process, just like you were talking about. And it's going to be ongoing. For me, going to a prayer group at 6 a.m. on Tuesday mornings, super early, yet I get to leave things there, I get to bring it up to God. And so it's a process for all of us. And I hope that working with folks, they go less from a project management viewpoint with relationships to more of it's an ongoing process, refining myself in the context of that relationship.
I agree on that. Um, as per you, Eric, how important is communication in navigating the whole, emotional health, path out there? Because a lot of times, either the person suffering from it or going through that experience is not opening up, not communicating in the required manner. We all build a lot of expectations in our head. And when you sit across with them, they're like, "This was something I assumed you would do," and has happened with me as well. With a lot of your family members, it often happens that, okay, I assumed this should have been done, and I'm like, if you would have communicated that to me instead of assuming it, one, we would not have been having this conversation. Neither of us would have to go through the stress of the argument we have, and that task would have been done much earlier than now. It would be taking time. So assumptions and no communication or less communication. What are your thoughts?
I work with a lot of couples, Pulkit. The assumptions piece is something that comes up a lot of the times. I thought you were going to take the dishes out all the way to, I don't know, I thought you were going to take our child to the basketball practice or whatever, right? Um, these expectations that people have that can lead to premeditated resentments. Communication is vastly important. And yes, there is problem solving that can happen in the context of communication. I can give someone two different suggestions for ways to do something and they get to make a decision. At least I give two decisions instead of telling them, you have to do it this way. It's like, hey, you could do this or this. What would you like to do? Yeah, I'd like to do this way. Okay, great. I do believe that being upfront with somebody and just simply spelling it out, verbalizing, hey, I feel a little irritated that we weren't able to have our, couples meeting that we usually do, like on Tuesday nights. Could we do that tonight, please? Yeah, sure. Just being able to do language that's friendly, that's firm, that's concise, it gets to the point. Don't have to ramble on. I do believe there is a place for that type of communication. Is there a place for a lack of communication, like less communication, like you asked? I do believe there is a time where there's more active listening that has to be done, and nonverbal is a big part of communication as well, more so than even verbal. Being able to show that I'm actually listening with my tone, with my body posture, the way my body is showing my partner, a lot of other things. Yeah, that's important too. So, yeah, we could talk about communication for the rest of the time together. I would just say, if somebody really wants to meet someone where they're at, they can always say something like, hey, I hear you saying blank. Am I on point or not? I'm just keeping it simple.
Amazing, amazing. Just one final point on communication before take our conversation forward, because you have been bringing up relationships and couple counseling quite a lot. So often it happens that, and again, point it's not often. I probably believe it's always, because when two people are coming together in a relationship, they're coming with very different life journeys, with very different backgrounds altogether. Um, and for people who have had, let's say, difficult childhood or difficult experiences in the past, their way to approach a relationship would be very different. It could be either from a place of fear, or it could be from a place of, living up to the other person's expectations. And for somebody else in the same relationship, it could be they've had a comparatively easier life. For them, things were, on that particular aspect of expressing themselves or getting the basic needs met, was not that difficult. So, though two people in a relationship are approaching things from a very different space, and let's say they get married, but as per you, what should be the communication points before they enter into a much more a commitment like marriage? What should be the communication points they should be discussing so that they're able to level the ground?
I believe doing premarital counseling in the context of family upbringing. I'll usually ask during an intake whether they're in a relationship or not. I mean, like marital relationship or not. What did you see with your family members growing up, as far as like mom and dad or whoever you grew up with? What did they show you or not show you when it comes to how to handle relationships? And yes, I've had people give me very, very responses. Usually they'll look at each other if it's a virtual session after that question, and then they'll like you first, right? Because maybe the other one has more of a detailed, more um, challenging past. And so simply just getting it out there and talking about the impact that that's had. Even the questions, what did your mom teach you about like women in general? What did your father teach you about men? How did they teach you as far as expressing anger? These type of questions for the other person in the relationship just to hear the answer is really important. And also talking about attachment styles as well is important for couples before they enter in. Because a lot of times that attachment style has been dictated or influenced, especially by the maternal caretaker growing up. So that is super important to look at, because if my mom, let's say, was quite avoidant, then more often than not, there's a likely possibility that I'm going to be quite avoidant as well. Okay, if that is the case, I do more emotional regulation by myself rather than reaching out to others, which is a dumbed down version of avoidant attachment. Okay, then I can learn to work on that. People think, and on Instagram too, it's often been shown, or social media, that these attachment styles are static, they're fixated. That's not the case. We can work on cultivating a different attachment style, secure attachment, where I have a balance between being able to emotionally regulate with other people, but also when I'm by myself and going back and forth between the two.
And this, and this. Um, like, how has learning martial arts really helped you in your journey in enabling people with their emotions? And I can sense a lot of calmness in your voice when you're talking. Usually, that calmness is not so reflective, but yes, in your voice, the way you're speaking, your body language, it's totally calm. So does martial arts have a role to play in that? And if yes, what has been the journey and how it helped you enable more people out there?
Yes, the answer is yes. Martial arts has played a part in my demeanor, how I approach life, how I look at balance and self control and discipline and even form, as far as Function's one thing, but just having proper form with something. And proper form could mean even doing like a trauma informed psychotherapy and doing that with, quote, proper form, not off the rails. So the person gets the best experience therapeutically. So I would say, as a experience I have with martial arts, when I was sparring, I was usually quite skittish. I was quite passive. I really had to be pushed into like more an assertive mode to actually, spar. And I talk about this in my first book that I had to be pushed. I didn't want to get to a place of aggressiveness, which sometimes did happen where I got a little too aggressive. Yet I had to learn the balance between, I don't know about this, I'm not ready, and being like full on, seeing red aggressive. So that is a part with martial arts, is it helped me learn the balance between passivity and aggression, and that also includes learning self-control, because when practicing moves, a part of it was being able to stop at a certain point and not actually hit the person, when practicing moves and techniques. Sometimes went too far, wasn't perfect. Sometimes it happened to me, you know. One time we were working with the screamer sticks. Somebody got hit upside the eyebrow. I had to go to the hospital to get stitches. I think stitches, but at least I had to go to the hospital. So, things like that happen. So self-control was a big piece. So when it comes to emotions, not that I'm like perfectly without being emotionally dysregulated. I have my moments too. Yet just from a general approach with emotions, with thoughts, with sensations, being able to just be more aware of what's happening in my body, because martial arts is a lot about awareness of the body, awareness of surroundings, awareness of this opponent and what's happening, with the opponent, even being able to forecast what's going to be the possible next move they're going to do. So there's just a lot of pieces there with martial arts, especially with discipline, where I need to show up for myself, show up on time, be focused, be mindful, be engaged. And a lot of that goes into how I live life, being mindful of what's going on in my body, being mindful of my surroundings, and just being able to approach life in that way.
Has been a really, amazing discussion with you, invigorating one. But yes, before we conclude, any final thoughts you'd like to share with the listeners out there?
I would just say, hey, if you're looking to get some support, be curious, Go back to that CIA. Be curious, be introspective about what you're feeling about even doing that first step. Like, oh man, this is going to be really tough. Acknowledge that, honor that feeling or feelings, and then take some agency, make a consult call. 15, 20 minutes with somebody doesn't cost anything usually, just to get a semblance of what it might look like for you. Don't have to do the first session, yet take that agency with that first step. And that's a piece I would give back to somebody.
Amazing. And I totally echo on that, Eric, with you. And for our listeners, if you want to take agency of, after you have been able to introspect and you have accepted and identified that you need to take agency, we run an anonymous mental health forum that's again called We Are Listening. You can come and vent out over there anonymously. And if you want professional help, you can just let us know by selecting an option over there. We are always there to help you. And remember, we are listening. And please stay tuned. Looking forward to more such invigorating episodes. Thank you, Eric.